Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Brian. We are back again, and we have another really fun review for you all. Today, we are looking at the newest Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. This comes in, again, at an age statement of 12 years old and 104 proof. Down below, you can read all about what makes birthday bourbon special, but I won't get into that here on the video. We'll jump right into the tasting. But after we do the initial review, I want to compare it to a couple of other products in the Brown Forman catalog. We're going to compare it quickly to the 2020 Birthday Bourbon. We're going to go to barrel 18 of the President's Choice. We're going to talk about the 117 series High Angel Share bottle. And then we're going to make mention to the King of Kentucky. Now, the King of Kentucky is not an Old Forester product, but there are a lot of similarities that I feel like I've noticed in this year's birthday bourbon, and I want to compare them directly to the King of Kentucky. Let's go ahead and get started on the nose. There's some ripe melon notes to it. It's not the focus. There are some red fruits for sure. It dives right into the vanilla and the caramel, brown sugar sweetness. It's very rich, very inviting nose. I don't know if you can see some of the legs on this glass here, but it has this baked cherry pie fruitiness, and then it moves into these old oak notes and some barrel char, and the barrel char kind of mingles with dark chocolate, and it's pretty intense. And I say intense because it reminds me of a very specific note that I pick up in King of Kentucky. Let's go ahead and dive into the palate on this one. And right away, the palate it's so rich, it's so coating. You get again those cherry pie notes. You notice that barrel char. You get a lot of vanilla. Right in the middle, it has this juiciness that sure it hits on the red fruits, but as I mentioned on the nose, it kind of has this melon-like note to it too. So it's fresh, juicy, ripe melon flavor. And the progression of the mouthfeel, it's so quick. The way it moves from the notes in the front, right after the kind of juicy middle, it gets this kind of high dark chocolate, high cocoa content dark chocolate note, and like a cinnamon spice that lingers. And the finish goes on for a pretty good length of time, but it's very dry on the palate as well. You almost have this pecan pie element to the palate, so getting into some of the pie crust, and then some of the chewy caramel, a little pecan nuttiness as well. So there's a lot of flavors that are here. But one thing that I've noticed on pours of this, even after I let it open for a little bit, if I let it open for a little bit, some more of the caramel sweetness comes out, but I don't notice a ton of complexity in terms of change to the pour the more times I sip it. So if I'm going to talk about the King of Kentucky, and we will here in a little bit, that's one that I feel like some more flavors start to come out. Every time you sip it, it might change a little bit. This year's birthday bourbon, while it has a lot of flavors, and it's a very big progression from the flavors you start with and the way that it ends, I feel like the flavors are pretty consistent from taste to taste or from pour to pour. Let's go ahead and kind of move towards some of the other pours, and maybe it'll help put in a position where this 2021 is. First, we're going to go to the 2020 birthday bourbon. On the nose immediately, it has more like of a green grass note. It's got some orange citrus, some lemon peel. I would say it has the banana note, where the 2021, I don't feel like it has that kind of banana note I notice in a lot of Old Forester products. The 2020 definitely does have that. It just reminds me a little bit more of a greener, is the best way to explain it, more underripe flavor nose than on the 2021. And there's something about it, even though it's 10 years old, it just seems a slight bit more youthful than the 2021. Let's go into the taste. The palate's definitely lighter. There's something about the palate that reminds me of some of the slightly more proof down dusty whiskeys for sure. But overall, I think it just comes off a little light in flavor. And the profile seemed completely different. While the 2020 seems to have some lighter fruit, maybe some tropical fruit, a little bit more of that banana comes in a little bit. When you go back to the 2021, it's so much more coating, so much more rich, and then full with that nuttiness, big chocolate notes, and a lot of oak presence. Transitioning to the President's Choice, Again, this is barrel 18. On the nose, it's most similar to the 2020 Birthday Bourbon. It's got a little bit of grassiness, it's got a little bit of that banana, it's got a little bit of citrus, and it has a little bit of chocolate. The flavors definitely ramp up on the palate. To be expected, I think the 2020 was 98 proof. This one we're going up a little bit above 110 proof, so it's the highest proof of any of the ones I've tried so far. It has some darker fruit presence, some raisin, some fig, a little bit of dark cherry, but then it definitely has a little bit more chocolate strands through it as well. It lingers with a little bit of oak, but it doesn't exactly taste old like the 2021 does. I think that the 2021 has more of an aged, old oak presence to it. I'm going to talk about the King of Kentucky first, which I know is the highest proof of any of these that we're going to try, and then I'm going to go to the 117, but trust me, I have a reason for it. Now, the reason I didn't do this as a blind is because, to me, King of Kentucky is one of the most perfect pours that there is. Off the bat, there's a lot of sweetness to the nose. It comes off punching right away. It's got this musty, dusty, character to the nose, caramelized sugars, layers of complexity. It's got a linger that just doesn't seem to stop. The palate has these luxurious, slow-moving caramelized sugars, lots of leather, lots of funky, slightly musty oak notes, antique oak notes. Sure, it's got some fruitiness and again, some dark fruits and some cherry as well. There's a little bit of a medicinal note that you notice in a lot of really well-aged or hyper-aged whiskeys, from Heaven Hill to Willet, all these Wild Turkey. And then it goes into some tobacco, some citrus, antique wood. I'm not going to go super verbose on this. I mean, I could do another video specifically on King of Kentucky. Again, it's one of my favorite pours, but I mainly want to do this for comparison. If you watched my earlier 117 video, you notice that I said that it had a lot of flavors similar to King of Kentucky. When I go to it now, the nose and the palate, you can tell it's a more youthful pour. So in my mind, while it has some chocolate, some oak, and some leather, you can tell that maybe the heat cycling of this or the evaporation loss is playing into some of that flavor, but that really, it is a little bit more youthful of a pour compared to the King of Kentucky. But going back to the 2021 birthday, you start to really notice how similar in flavor it is to the King of Kentucky. Bright cherry fruits, vanilla and caramelized sugars, the really well toasted barrel char, lots of oak. The leather comes in too, maybe not getting as much citrus or tobacco, but when you go from the King and come back to the 2021 birthday, you really notice that it seems like a little bit more subdued, mellow profile of the King. So to me, in terms of complexity, I got to give it to the King of Kentucky. But for what it is, the Birthday Bourbon is definitely the closest product that I have tasted to the 2019 King of Kentucky, which among the 13 or so barrels that I had tried from that release, it has just been super, super solid. And I've had barrels from the 2018 release and the 2020 release as well. Also really good. There's some pros and cons either way, but I found that the barrels that were in the 2019 release to all be pretty much superb. That's going to do it for this review of the 2020 Birthday Bourbon. Thanks again so much, everybody, for tuning in. I hope this was helpful in at least placing it against some other products in the portfolio. I enjoy this one more than the 2020 release. I enjoy it more than the 19. I would probably say the 18 as well. Some of the past years, I'd have to put them side by side to see, but at least in the past couple of years, I would say that the 2021 very much ranks high above that. And I would say it's probably the closest pour that I've had recently to one of my favorites, the King of Kentucky. I know these all might be a little bit difficult for you all to get, and that's why I figured I'd taste them side by side, try and pull out some of those nuances to see if one of them is worth chasing versus one of the other products. Thanks so much for tuning into the channel, everybody. If you want more content like this, feel free to subscribe to the Entry Proof Podcast. That's a podcast that I do with Drew P. Whiskey. He's also here on YouTube. We're generally live on his channels Thursday nights talking about all sorts of things. You can support the show, patreon.com/entryproofpodcast. That's a way to continue to provide content for you all, for both Drew and I here on the YouTube, and continue what we're doing with barrel picks and being able to kick some behind the scenes footage and such back to you all for doing so. Link down below for any of those sorts of things. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.